friends, we've been talking about partitioning rectangles into rows and columns. So, as a reminder, rows go side to side and columns run up and down. So, we can use this knowledge when looking at a rectangle that's already been partitioned into rows and columns to figure out how many rows and how many columns there are. So, let's take a look at number 1. I see a lot of little tiny rectangles inside that rectangle, but I'm going to do one at a time and figure out how many rows there are first. Well, I know that rows go side to side, so I see 1, 2, 3 rows. So there are 3 rows in this rectangle. Now, if I look for columns, I know columns are the opposite of rows and they run up and down. So I'm going to do this in a different color. So I see, okay, here's the line, here's the line. So I know I'm looking for the space between each line. So that's 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns. So there's 3 rows and 4 columns in that rectangle. Now, I can do this another way by simply counting the squares or rectangles along the sides or along the top. So if I want to know how many rows there are, I can look, okay, these rectangles are going all the way across. So this is 1 row because there's 1 square here. Then there's one right underneath as well, which means this is also a row. So that is the second row. So I've got 2 rows there. And then if I count the boxes along the top, that will tell me how many columns there are. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 1, 2 rows and 5 columns. 2 rows, 5 columns. Let's see if we could do number 3. So I'm going to pause and I want you to see if you can figure out how many rows and how many columns there are in number 3. Try rows first. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 rows because they go all the way across. So 4 rows. If you got 4 rows, kiss your brain. Try now the columns. If you counted 4 columns, you were right. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 columns. So in this rectangle, we have 4 rows and 4 columns. And let's try number 4. Let's do columns first this time. I'll pause. You see if you can figure out how many columns are there. If you said 5 columns, you were correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 columns. Try to count the rows. If you counted 4 rows, you were correct. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this rectangle, we have 4 rows and 5 columns.